TV7 is your election news leader. One longtime Republican is facing a challenge in Texas's 17th congressional district. The 17th district is made up of Waco, Lufkin, Nacogdoches, and some of the surrounding areas.
Incumbent Representative Pete Sessions is competing against Democratic Dr. Mark Lorenzen. KLTV7's Michael Richardson sat down with both for tonight's story.
Congressman Pete Sessions is looking to secure his 14th term in the House of Representatives. The Waco native represented the Dallas area for 2 decades before moving back to his hometown. He discusses his biggest priority if reelected.
The biggest priority that we have is to make sure that the American people do not find themselves in conflict with the federal government.
Dr. Mark Lorenzen, a pediatrician, says his biggest priority if elected is the same as why he entered the race.
It seems to me that our democracy, our Constitution, our freedoms are under fire.
Dr. Lorenzen's economic agenda includes raising the minimum wage and increasing the child tax credit. He says he would vote not to extend the 2017 tax cuts enacted under the Trump administration.
I think we have a pretty good economy going right now, but we can do a lot more for the hard-working men and women of this country.
Representative Sessions' plan to improve the economy includes bolstering domestic energy production and placing restrictions on work from home for federal employees. He says he would vote to extend the Trump tax cuts.
When you have higher taxes, it harms workers and it harms the economy.
Affordable health care is on many voters' minds this election. In 2017, Congressman Sessions voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Here's how he views the law now.
Well, first of all, I don't think we have to do anything with Obamacare.
You voted to repeal it.
Yes, but you first, and the next vote is, what do you want to make it better? I do not see us repealing Obamacare. That's unnecessary. It needs competition to work better for the American people.
Dr. Lorenzen does not feel the ACA should be repealed and wants to expand Medicare and Medicaid if elected.
We all pay a little bit for the Medicare program. It's not much. We could pay a little more.
To curb illegal immigration, Congressman Sessions has been vocal in his support for building a wall along the entire southern border. Others, including Representative Colin Allred, have called for barriers in targeted areas instead. But the wall is a topic Sessions will not compromise on.
There's no need to compromise. Why would you create a circumstance where you have a gap? And because that's where people will funnel. Once there is a change of administration, Republicans will stop not only the illegal flow, but stop the gaps that are overrunning our country.
Dr. Lorenzen does not support building a wall along the entire southern border.
I think we need compassionate policies, not building giant walls, not razor wire.
Lorenzen believes the U.S. should do more to help other countries to curb illegal immigration.
I think we could maybe rebuild and help other countries, our neighbors, help them create a safe and sound place for their citizens so they don't need to come here.
With early voting underway, 17 district residents are making their voices heard for who they want to represent them in Washington. Michael Richardson, KLTV7 News.
Early voting is underway in Texas until November the 1st, Election Day, 2 weeks on the 5th.